Hi, superheroes. I'm Pink Phoenix, coming to you from Purdue University College of Veterinary Medicine's League of Vetihumans. Have you ever met your soulmate? I'm not talking about love. I'm talking about a colleague at work, that person you just click with, and you know that together you're going to change the world. Does that ever happen to you? What about the opposite? Ever encounter someone who you're just not on the same page with? No matter what you say or do, it's going to be the wrong thing. And now you're losing sleep over what's going to happen the next time you see them. How are you going to build this relationship? If you can relate to either of these scenarios, I think you'll really enjoy this show. So without further delay, I bring you an awesome dynamic duo on Vetihumans Live, Kindness Warrior and MOR. These two superheroes exemplify that perfect team, and they work together to help us navigate workplace relationships that might not be as stellar as theirs. Thanks for being on the show, Kindness Warrior and MOR.
We're happy to be here, Pink Phoenix.
To get started, can you tell us your stories?
I'll tell you my story. So I'm a native West Virginian and went to vet school at Louisiana State University after being at WVU there in West Virginia. I ended up down there because West Virginia doesn't have a vet school, and so they had some contracts, and one of those is with LSU. So I love being in the South. Did an internship at Georgia, ended up at Texas A&M in 1983 as a resident, internal medicine resident. And then I got boarded in internal medicine, got boarded in oncology, mainly did oncology for a lot of years, and then moved into administration at Texas A&M. So I was there for 38 years, and I just recently retired this past July. I've been also the director of diversity and inclusion for the college for about a decade. And also was the executive associate dean for the last 5 years. And the 10 years before that, I took care of the vet students as associate dean for professional programs. But now I live in Wimberley, Texas, and trying to enjoy retirement, although we're still working a lot.
That's awesome.
And
how about you, Mark?
Obviously, Nance Algert. I am from Southern California, from south of San Diego. I reside in Wimberley, Texas, which is a little piece of heaven here. And I am not a veterinarian. My PhD is in educational psychology. I am a counselor, a facilitator, a conflict manager, and had the privilege 10 years or so ago to start spending time with veterinarians and veterinary programs, and fell in love with both. And so have the privilege to get to spend time with you veterinarians.
Excellent. In case our listeners don't know, Kindness Warrior and MOR go around the country and maybe the world delivering phenomenal mediation training. I'm fortunate to have participated. So I want to hear how this partnership came about. Can you tell us about the moment when you two connected and knew that you could make a difference in the world together?
Well, I think it was about actually a little longer than that. Probably about 12 years ago now, 12 or 13 years ago, I actually had the good fortune of being allowed to take a 40-hour mediation training class on Texas A&M campus. There were about 20 of us from all different colleges, and Nance was leading that as she had done many times before, but that was my first introduction to that. That was such an awesome experience, although scary, I'll have to tell you. Such a great experience that a couple years later, campus decided that the colleges, if they were really interested in that sort of work, should take that on their own. So the vet school was one of the few actually colleges that stepped up to the plate and did that on campus. And subsequently, I in my role as diversity director, hired Nance to come into the college to do cohorts of 20. And so we go back next week for another one actually at Texas A&M. And when we finish that one, we'll be a little over 200 faculty and staff at the College of Vet Med. As I retired and as I went a little further along with it now, I do some of these trainings with her. She's still top dog, but we do these together, and we've had the good fortune of, as you said, traveling around a bit and doing it at not only some different veterinary places, but also for colleges of medicine. We're doing some work with a diversity unit at a school in Colorado, et cetera. So it's useful skills for everybody.
Absolutely. I remember when you came here and I was signed up to take it, I was like, oh, how am I going to take days out of my schedule to do this? And it was scary, right? I'm going to have to talk in front of people. And I went, and I believe that within the first 15 minutes, I was all in. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I used this every single day. So
well, we remember,
all are fantastic.
We remember because you were amazing. And that's why we're still good friends and still talking, right, over the years, is because that early relationship building, which was awesome.
Well, thank you so much. So you have such an excellent dynamic together. So how did that evolve? Did you click right away, or how's that developed over the years?
I would say we clicked right away, but I think maybe that's a myth I created in my head to build ego strength. Kenita talked about bringing me in, and I found out after the fact, she's like, this was an experiment to see if you were any good and would click with us and so forth. And so it's like, oh, I didn't know I was being tested for 40 hours. But I think we really clicked because I gave Kenita the opportunity to come and be part of a role play in front of about 300 people, probably about 12 years ago, where Kenita was supposed to engage in conflict with me. None of the 300 people knew. She was not gentle. She wasn't ugly, but wasn't gentle in her comments about, is this what you're going to talk about again? And suddenly she had 300 set of eyes.
Yeah, 300 darts of eyes turned on me.
How'd that go?
Well, it went exactly the way she wanted. She wanted them to feel viscerally what conflict could feel like. And so she had a stranger to this group of 300 sit in the back of the room, have conflict with her as she was sitting up front. She had already built rapport. I had zero rapport, and sort of called her out on some things that we had already planned. What I wasn't prepared for was how long it would take me to recover from this fake, actually, conflict that she had created to share with them those feelings. And yet even though I knew about it, I still had those feelings as well. So, and she was supposed to buy me lunch that day and never did. So I don't know how good this relationship is.
So it felt great to me. And then I got a 1-page single space type email from Kenita because she could not sleep that night after the event because of what she experienced. So in spite of that, we have a strong working relationship. So I think if we could get through that, we probably could get through just about anything.
But if she ever asks you to role play in front of a group of 100 to 300 people, just say no.
Say no. Well, I want to hear about this recovery process.
Well, it was funny because there were very few people in the room that did know who I was. They were staff. This was 300 staff from across campus, and very few of them were from the vet school. And so they knew who I was, had no idea why I was speaking up, however, in this somewhat rude way. And like I said, it was that turning of an emotion in a room because she had built rapport. They all felt, it seemed to me, to feel protective of her. And even though they didn't know me, didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, who I was, etc., an entire room of individuals felt, again, a visceral reaction to this, and I believe wanted to be protective of her. And I felt all of that. And I've thought about that many times because this was a role play. They didn't know it at the time. It was real for them. But that feeling that I had of being the other, being the outcast, being the negative person, the person they wanted to get rid of out of the room, has sort of stayed with me, right? Because we don't want to make others feel that way. And so having experienced it myself actually has been a little bit helpful to me because it was a little traumatic. It was a little traumatic.
So, what did you use to get over that? Aside from not sleeping, it sounds like.
Because I couldn't sleep, I actually, as a lot of people talk about, and as Nance just allayed, I sort of journaled. But I typed out a response. Let me just tell you how this experience was for me today. And this is what I observed personally. I don't know if it's what you observed, but I gave it to her as sort of a 1-page or 2-page, I don't remember, I had a lot to say, narrative about what my experience was, because I thought it might be useful to her as a conflict manager in the future in understanding maybe what some people are feeling when they're either at the mediation table or in a difficult dialogue.
And I saved it and use it. And it's that great reminder when we say to people, just go have a conversation with so-and-so that you're in conflict with. That's ideal. That's what we would like folks to do. And it's a whole lot more complicated for a whole bunch of us for me, simply to go have that conversation with person X, my work colleague.
So, what advice do you have for others who want to build working relationships like yours?
Dialogue, which is a form of communication where we work to suspend judgment as we listen for new information. And so to build a relationship simply, Kenita comes from West Virginia and I come from Southern California. And you can stereotype the two and say our foundation is very different. And we have all these different diversity and identity dimensions that if we don't talk to one another, get to know one another, see one another as people, it's super simple to stereotype, or this person behaves different than me, communicates different than me, thinks or feels different than me. And I move to a place of judgment instead of, hey, I got to get to know this person. She's got to get to know me. And we can grow and appreciate our similarities and our vast differences. And how do we complement each other? As you know, Pink Phoenix, I use 600 words when it can be said in 10 to 20 words. And it is very linear and succinct. And I'm pretty random. And so together, we bring different strengths and complement one another so we can better serve folks we work with.
And I'd say the other thing that I think we work hard on, but a lot of great teammates work hard on, that's just the building of trust. And understanding that if Nance offends me in some way or says something or forgets something, or it's probably not personal because we have trust built up, but I should feel comfortable saying, hey, do you know that you told me you would do this and it wasn't in on time? How come? And be kind to one another, but keep building that trust.
Well, and not that ever happened that I didn't get something in on time. Don't that.
I'm sure never.
I don't know why I use that as an example. How foolish of me. But yeah, so the building of trust in all its facets, I think is a huge part of things, because I want to be able to trust her so much, just like we trust you, Pink Phoenix, to that if something doesn't go quite the way we planned, we're able to give some grace, ask a question, understand, and not assume the worst. Always assume the best.
I love it. So I'm big on best day evers if you've listened to the podcast. So what has been your best day ever working together? Tell us about it.
I have a recent example.
Okay, you go first.
This ties into the trust. We were working with a group at a university in the last 2 weeks, and we had mapped out, we were invited up to do a 5-hour workshop with this group. And we were prepared. We think we had something really solid and great. And we get up there and have dinner with our host the night before. And a lot had happened within that organization in the previous 5 days. And we look at our host and say, gosh, it sounds like for us to stand and do a canned workshop, no matter how interactive and so forth, doesn't seem to be what y'all need. And so best day ever, this idea that in real time we can adapt co-create, walk in that next morning at 8:30 and execute and support the group in what they espoused at the end of our time together. They needed, that it was valuable and best day ever, that there was the trust, the flexibility, the creativity to deliver what they needed instead of being entrenched in positional of, no, we prepared this and spent months on this.
We'll do what you need. I think my best day ever working with Nance is actually sort of an amalgam, and that's at actually at Purdue, but also at Texas A&M, because I have so much experience there, is at the last day of 40-hour leadership training using mediation, how many people come up and say, this made a difference, or I used this last night, or I used this in this scenario, whatever. So having the kind of impact on so many people in professional development that actually helps them at work, but also, which is important to me, but also helps them personally as they're dealing with parents and kids and husbands and wives and partners and, the like, to be able to use those skill sets. That to me is has been a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been so helpful, both for having the tools that I can bring to all those places that you said, and also as a self-check, as a gut check, because I know when I'm being mediated now. It's like, oh.
Awesome.
All right, while you're here, let's show our listeners what you've got. I think we can all relate to a time when we've encountered somebody in our lives where, like, no matter what we say or do, it's not going to be the right thing. So without giving away all your secrets, if this is somebody we have to work with every day, what are 3 things that our listeners can do to move forward?
I need to talk about rule of 6.
So set boundaries. Nobody should be able to push us into places we shouldn't be going. In other words, use our moral compass, use our capabilities to set some boundaries for people. A second is, we talked a minute ago, I think, about assuming the best of folks instead of the worst. And a good friend of mine, Darcy Shaw, who's also an internist, said, he taught us about the rule of 6, which means whenever someone does something that seems out of whack, something that angers you, something that doesn't make sense, something you think is contrary to what you believe should have happened, before you go rushing off in anger to that, toward that person, think of the rule of 6. What are 6 other reasons besides what assumptions we're making could be happening right now, instead of what we assumed? Do that. Even write them down, take a little bit of time, take a breath, and then go talk to them about it. And then what would you say a good third one would be?
I think about, we've been doing some work from Dr. Brene Brown, the Dare to Lead, a 24-hour certification program. And one of the things she talks about is this idea that clear is kind and unclear is unkind. So having that clear, direct, honest conversation, if possible, with the person. And because that idea that, they're going to get the innuendo, or as we beat around the bush what we mean, that's not clear, right? So that can be unkind. As you talk about having the clear boundaries too, none of us should be in a workplace environment where someone is allowed to be abusive, highly disrespectful. So Pink Phoenix, if you disagree with me, if you have some strong emotions, I'm fine with all of that. But there's a line where folks should not be allowed to cross. And so our organization, so this is not necessarily me, the individual, but all of us as individuals make up the organization. The idea of when we say, let it go, that's just the way that person is. Right? He's an equal opportunity yeller, or she's an equal opportunity cuss you outer. No, we don't. I don't think we get to do that in our organizations anymore, and it's still very, very prevalent.
So the role in that case, and the thing about boundaries, because there are power differentials and people who feel that they might be retaliated against, etc. It is so important in organizations for the leadership, whether that be a section chief or an associate dean or a department head or a dean, whoever, it might be the head of technicians. It could be a lot of different people need to be there for folks and really be chosen somewhat on the basis of being a good servant leader, being someone who the success of everyone leads directly to their success, and that's how they feel internally.
Such good advice, as always. Thank you. All right, let's get a little personal. Kindness warrior, you're in retirement now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Still doing consulting. So I hear you've been exploring emotional intelligence and well-being. Can you tell me more about that journey?
Yeah, that really started actually with the Texas A&M DVM curriculum. So twofold. One is I have some assignments primarily within diversity and inclusion, as well as well-being and other pieces of all that I think are all kind of related to one another. In the DVM curriculum, I'm also just recently stepped off the board of the Veterinary Leadership Institute, which supports and functions with the VLE and now TREC, which are professional development opportunities for students and faculty and practitioners, that they're really based on conflict management, emotional intelligence, professional well-being, etc. And so feedback. And so mainly it's been in those venues that I've tried to really learn as much as I can, because not only can it help me personally, but that's really been a job that I've had, is to try to present some of that information more broadly.
It's excellent. You mentioned some really good professional development opportunities. Are there other resources you would recommend?
Yeah, so there's so many, and it sort of depends on what the needs are, right? It also depends on the level of within the profession, and I'm just talking within the profession now, but certainly at the colleges, student well-being is a huge deal right now across the board, right? And so within schools, a lot of curricula are now really doing a great job of moving toward more content and normalizing that it's okay to ask for help. Most schools have either access to or embedded counseling resources that really are helpful, and everyone I've ever met has just been really great support for the students. But as it gets on, where I think the tipping point comes is post-graduation, right? There aren't as many supports. You get all this support while you're in vet school, and now all of a sudden, go out, little bird, and you're on your own. And so I think a lot of the veterinary associations, the AVMA, a lot of them are doing a lot more. But I think being on some of the listservs, having affinity groups that you belong to is really helpful. I think having mentors is super helpful to kind of shore you up sometimes. The Veterinary Leadership Institute just recently did this new program called TREC. It was sort of based on how VLE runs, but it was all for practitioners or postgraduate individuals in the veterinary profession. Not every single one was a veterinarian. Most were. Very intensive, but it was about how to keep from being burned out, how to reach out to colleagues, how to stay true to yourself and your moral compass, et cetera. And so I think there's a lot of resources out there, but the ones that work for you might be different. Everybody's a little bit different, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, MOR, you're on. I hear you've been working on simplifying your life and living in the present. So what strategies are you using?
Oh, gosh. I was going to say using fewer words when I communicate, but I've not modeled that over the last 25 minutes or so. So that's probably not true. Working to be really far more intentional, whether it is setting what are my 2 or 3 intentions for the day, or when I'm serving a group, what are my intentions in serving the group. Very much working on staying in the now instead of living backward in time in the past, or getting worried and anxious about the future and creating this myth about the future and pretending it's real, and then reading what I can to be a better me.
What's a good book?
Well, now that you mention it, Book City. I don't know if you've read this.
Nice.
By Glennon Doyle, Untamed. It's one part of the work I do. I work as a psychotherapist also, and I've been recommending that book a good bit because I think it's about finding our footpath instead of the social construct of who we're supposed to be. I think that's aligned with Kenita's comments related to wellness and not having burnout when we're hospitable, when we're kind, when we exercise perspective taking, that's all critically important. And simultaneously remembering we're in this picture, we're one of the variables, and often in the need and service work, we think a lot about the others and fail to think about ourselves.
Tell her about that book too.
Yeah. Well, one other book, and then it would be there's only two here in front of us. Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I'm not a big TV watcher, but Shonda Rhimes has written
Grey's Anatomy and
other things.
all many, lots of shows.
And
we are fans.
And this is a wonderful book where she talks about her sister had a difficult dialogue with her. And so Shonda Rhimes decided for a year she was going to say yes.
Instead of no
to things she was invited to. So whether that was giving a keynote address or going to a social or something, and how it was transformative for she connecting with herself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Reconnecting with herself in a different way. So 2 fabulous books, recent reads.
Excellent. So you have a lot to offer the universe here.
Mm-hmm.
How can our listeners connect with you if they would like to use your services?
Hey, cool. Reach out to us through our website, which is www.cccrtx.us. And that has our email links, and it talks about what we do and books we've written. And so it's pretty easy to find us that way.
Perfect.
I think the one other important thing is that that we're sort of starting to get engaged in now is Nance has gotten certified to do the Brene Brown Dare to Lead 24-hour workshops, et cetera. And we've she's just recently completed a cohort at the veterinary teaching hospital, and is going to do another one in July. And that has really resonated with people. So those words of, learning about ourselves, learning about our emotions, how to bring our full selves to the table, has also really resonated with people. It's been fun to watch that happen in the veterinary profession.
This is excellent. Thank you. And I will put that website in the show notes as well.
Cool.
So before we sign off, what inspirational message do you have for aspiring veterinarians everywhere?
I would just say I'm so proud to be a veterinarian. I have never wanted to be anything else since about the 4th grade, and it's been the career of a lifetime. And so I'm so happy to still be continuing to support veterinarians because I think it's a fun profession. It's a tough profession, but again, I wouldn't do it any differently any step of the way.
Gosh, and I, as a non-veterinarian, would add, be kind to yourselves. That you veterinarians do this brilliant job of serving other people and animals and demonstrating great kindness at times at the expense of yourself. And so being kind, being connected, being reflective, taking really good care of yourselves.
Outstanding, inspiring as always. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you, Pink Phoenix. It's always my pleasure, our pleasure to be with you.
It truly is. Absolutely.
You can learn more about other League of Vetahumans superheroes at vetahumans.org. If you liked this episode, and I know that you did, please subscribe, rate, and share it with your friends. And remember, use your powers for good.